Good morning, it's March 18th, and this is To My Liberal Friends. The Russians are coming, the Russians are coming. This was the name of a 1966 film. It was a comedy about a Russian submarine washing ashore in New England, and when the sailors went for help, the small town residents are panicked. We've all listened to the modern day version of this chant, with Democrats claiming the Russians were coming in 2020, and they're already ginning up that refrain for the 2024 elections. And this has led Joe Biden and other Democrats to build a campaign theme around how you have to vote for them to save democracy. They say that the possibility of Russian influence, combined with events of January 6, 2021, that democracy is at stake, and we have to defend it. And the only way to defend it is to vote for them. And over, we have heard Democrats decry any foreign influence on our elections. And I agree with them. We should not tolerate foreign influence of any kind. But when it suits them, they're willing to exert some influence on elections in other nations and in other political parties here in this country. And here's an excerpt from a speech made by the leader of the Democrats in the Senate, Chuck Schumer. He took to the floor to say that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has lost his way and called for new elections aimed at choosing a new government in Israel. Now, this is what I would call politicians in the United States attempting to interfere in the elections of a foreign nation, especially Israel. And being honest, we as a nation have been guilty of interfering in elections of other countries for decades. Now, Republican leader Mitch McConnell took to the floor to rebut Schumer's suggestion, quoting him, "It is grotesque and hypocritical for Americans who hyperventilate about foreign interference in our own democracy to call for the removal of a democratically elected leader of Israel. This is unprecedented. We should not treat fellow democracies this way at all." End quote. So that would bring up the obvious question. Why would Senator Schumer be making such an outlandish statement? Well, it's simple. He made that because of politics here in the United States. The Democratic Party is fractured over support for Israel and their war against Hamas, terrorists, and those who want to support Palestine. Joe Biden didn't have the courage to make that statement, so his water boy, Chuck Schumer, went ahead and made it. And this war, in retaliation for the Hamas terrorist attacks last October that resulted in the killing of Israelis and taking over 250 hostages, has made many Democratic politicians have jelly legs. They want to support Israel, but they also want the votes of those demanding that Israel withdraw from Gaza and stop the war. Of course, you never see anybody demand that Hamas cease firing rockets into Israel. They never demand that Hamas promise not to attack Israel in the future. Here's a ceasefire promise I will make. Well, I'll call for a ceasefire, but the moment one rocket is fired into Israel, then Israel has every right to go in and level Gaza. And they forget that countries like the United States, Australia, Japan, Canada, New Zealand, Great Britain, Paraguay, and the European Union have all declared Hamas to be a terrorist organization. These Democrats love to talk about protecting democracy, but they seem to forget that concept when it's convenient to them. Let's look here in this country. In the California Senate primary, Adam Schiff spent millions of dollars promoting the Republican opponent on the ballot, Steve Garvey. You all remember Congressman Schiff. He's the one that said he had conclusive proof that Donald Trump had colluded with the Russians during the 2016 election. Of course, he never produced that proof and ended up being censored by the Republican House majority when they took office. He did this so as to thwart any momentum from any other Democratic opponent in the primary, particularly Congresswoman Katie Porter. So he pumped up Steve Garvey. Now, what do you think Mr. Schiff would be saying if a Republican had done the same thing to him in a red state? And Democrats are up in the same shenanigans in Ohio. Senator Sherrod Brown, the incumbent, will more than likely face a very difficult re-election in Ohio. Ohio is a state that is scheduled to vote heavily for Donald Trump. So it stands to reason that the Democrats want to pick the candidate they can feel Senator Brown can defeat. And that primary is this week. It'll be Tuesday. A Democratic group is wading into the Republican Senate primary there in Ohio with a new television spot aimed at promoting the conservative credentials of Bernie Moreno, a Cleveland area businessman who's been endorsed by former President Donald Trump. The spot criticized Moreno as being ultra-conservative and too aligned with Trump. But by running the ad in the final week of the primary, those critiques are likely to be viewed as a badge of honor by Republican primary voters, a tactic Democrats have employed in other races in recent years. This media buy has been funded through the efforts of the Senate Majority PAC, the principal super PAC supporting efforts to ensure that Democrats maintain control of the Senate chamber. So why are Democrats running ads in a Republican primary? Remember, you have to vote for us to save democracy. In both of these instances, the Democrats are not content to allow the voters in the Republican Party to choose their candidate without interference from Democrats. They want to stack the deck to try and make sure their candidate wins. So the next time you hear Democrats saying, we're only trying to save democracy, I think they have some questions to answer themselves. Well, moving back to Senator Chuck Schumer calling for Netanyahu to be replaced, it appears to have backfired on him, as support for Netanyahu's party will more than likely gain seats in the Israeli legislative body. And the Israeli people have rallied around the prime minister. Now, I wonder how Schumer would have reacted if another foreign political leader, say England or France, had demanded that the United States not retaliate against Osama bin Laden and his group for the September 11 attacks on the Twin Towers. This cost over 3,000 lives in New York. What do you think Schumer would have said to those people? The signal this should send to Democrats is stay out of other nations and other parties' politics. That's really saving democracy. It's been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.